Hey there, everybody. This is Kristin from Teaching Balance, and I am here with you with this week's mindfulness meditation practice. We are currently in the month focusing on the joy of simple pleasures. We've talked a little bit about the pleasures around eating. We've talked a little bit about just that allowing our senses to take things in very intentionally, particularly when we're outside and walking. And I wanted for this week to talk a little bit more about the concept of pleasure in and of itself. Now, gosh, where to begin? here's my sort of overarching thought on this. I believe that the pursuit of pleasure in general is a good thing. And I don't really believe in self-denial. I also don't necessarily believe in overindulgence to the point where it's, detrimental. Not surprisingly, I'm a big fan of balance. And if I were to take a guess, I would say that many people, myself included, will sometimes feel, for whatever reason, that pleasure doesn't necessarily have as much value as like work and being productive and things like that. And, obviously this is like so many things, a spectrum regarding how you perceive that. But one of the things that I have learned about around this is that allowing oneself pleasure is useful in and of itself. Now, of course, a lot of what we talk about in this context is about nourishing ourselves and taking care of ourselves and self-care, which is a word that has been, kind of manipulated in a way that's not necessarily how I think it was originally intended. But this idea around supporting ourselves and not driving ourselves too hard, not working ourselves to death. When we can, we're trying to find that sweet spot in the middle. And because this is something that is so of interest to me, a couple of years ago I read this book called Pleasure Activism. And I have it up. The author's name is Adrienne Marie Brown. Pleasure Activism. The Politics of Feeling Good. And I liked it a lot. I mean, some of it was like a bit much, but I think if you're writing a book about this, obviously you have to push the envelope in that regard. But what I liked about it was that she was exploring the value of taking care of yourself, of giving, and not just like, personal grooming. But what I mean is like really allowing yourself to feel pleasure and to make it a priority. Not just, even the most obvious forms of pleasure, but even others, like whatever feeds you, whatever fills your bucket, whatever makes you happy and makes you feel good. Because from her perspective, which I agree with, when we do these things to our, for ourselves, it really does give us, strength. It nourishes us, it supports us. And honestly, I really do think it gives us the gift of fully inhabiting our humanity. It's a complex world on this plane, and there's upsides and downsides, but we might as well allow ourselves to really explore all the upsides when we can. So that's really the inspiration for my invitation for you this week. In a nutshell, it's just to really reflect on what is it that gives you pleasure, that perhaps you're denying yourself or not giving yourself as much of as would be, more joyful, and to really allow yourself to go deeper in some way around that. And that can sometimes be around, asking for what you need when it comes to support at work, at home, Giving yourself permission to perhaps do nothing, to rest, to sleep, and of course, more obviously, to do things that actually give you some kind of pleasure. So do with that what you will. Check out the book if you find it interesting. She definitely goes into the much more about the whole concept of sensual pleasures and intimacy and all of that kind of thing. But it doesn't have to be just that, of course. There's lots of ways to have pleasure. There are a myriad of possibilities. So that's my invitation to you this week. Now, normally, when we go into our meditation, one of the things that I encourage you to cultivate is a quality of sort of objectivity. But just because it's kind of fun and we're talking about this idea of pleasure, I'm going to lead us in a slightly different direction towards really inviting in the pleasure of whatever you might find in your meditation experience today. Now, if that's not something that you're feeling and you just want to do your more traditional one, feel free to do whatever feels right to you. But I'm going to go ahead and take it in a slightly different direction today. So when you're ready, allowing yourself to get into a comfortable position. Now, I think most people, when they think about meditating, are usually thinking about sitting like I'm sitting, perhaps cross-legged, sitting upright. But if, for whatever reason, that doesn't really feel comfortable and, dare I say, pleasurable to you today, then I'm going to encourage you perhaps to take a moment. If you'd like, you can pause this recording and get into a position that feels more supportive and pleasurable for you. And that might be sitting but in an armchair where you're more supported, perhaps even in a reclined position, and perhaps even lying down. You can lie down on your back, or since we're playing with this idea of indulging ourselves in what feels the most good, if you wanted to lay down, curled up in the fetal position, whatever works. So that's the invitation for right now, just sitting in a way that feels good. No discomfort, just pleasure. And as you settle in, giving yourself the opportunity just to check in with your body. We were checking in with it with regards to posture, but right now just doing a very brief light scan. And if you're having any areas of discomfort, seeing if there is a way that you can attend to that. Maybe you need to put some pillows under your knees. Or it might be the kind of discomfort that really just can't be remedied in this moment, and that's okay. We're not going to try to pretend that that discomfort isn't here. We're going to allow it to be, and simultaneously allow ourselves to be aware of not just what feels quote-unquote bad right now, but what also feels good. So if your breath is feeling expansive in this moment, allowing yourself just to invite in some of those deep breaths. Maybe even stretching. Doing what feels good. This is all about giving yourself permission. And if your breathing isn't feeling particularly expansive right now, that's okay too. What is feeling good? Sometimes when I'm in that in-between place in bed, either just waking up or close to falling asleep, I think it's really interesting just to explore what's good right now. when my body feels relatively pain-free, allowing myself really just to enjoy that, to enjoy it, savor it, move things. And also just the pleasure of resting, which, depending on how you're sitting or lying down, you can also do a scan to see what muscles are engaged right now that perhaps don't need to be. Sometimes I hold my jaw with a little bit of stiffness without realizing it, or my shoulders are often kind of up high. So even though this isn't what we typically do in our meditation, giving yourself permission just to stretch out whatever wants to be stretched. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And if you do notice any tightness in your body, you don't have to try to change it, but if you'd like to, perhaps allowing yourself even to contract it even more and then releasing it. Of course, inevitably, your mind is going to wander. That's what it does. And in the same spirit that I invite you to not judge yourself, I want you to even be more permissive, particularly if what you're thinking about elicits some positive or good or pleasurable quality that brings up good feelings, emotions around joy. And if your attention and your thinking goes a little darker, acknowledging that, and then just allowing yourself to turn your attention back to what's good right now. Feeling the support of the chair or the bed or the floor beneath you. Perhaps appreciating the fact that in this moment you don't have to strain to do anything. Sometimes when I'm sitting, whether I'm formally meditating or just trying to be still and settle, one of the things I'll do to ground myself is just to kind of rub my fingertips together, just allowing myself to feel what that feels like. If my skin is rough, noticing that. Or if it's soft, noticing that, perhaps delighting in that fact. You can even rest your hands on your legs or abdomen or whatever is feeling most appropriate to you right now. And even just like a gentle connecting with your sense of touch. Gentle rubbing like you would perhaps a cat or a dog. Allowing that, if it feels right to be something you can do for yourself right now. And for the minute or so that remains of this meditation, again, reveling in all that is good right now. Perhaps feeling that you are in good health, that your body feels good, that perhaps, hopefully in this moment, you feel emotionally good. And allowing ourselves just to savor anything that's good for us in this moment until we hear that final bell. And that's our 10 minutes. So if doing your meditation like we just did really resonated for you, I would encourage you to continue to do it like that for a while. To be very permissive, to be very, doing whatever you want to do. I had taken a course with one of my meditation teachers, not really a formal course. It was more just like a number of weeks of practice together. And one of the big things was just letting your body move like it wants to move. And that could be kind of weird and odd, like maybe you want to rock, maybe you want to lay down, maybe you want to twist, but not really thinking about it, just doing whatever feels right in the moment. I thought that was a really interesting, very unique for me way of exploring presence and being present to how things are. In a much more somatic, physical way. So, as always, thank you so much for taking this time for yourself, and thank you for allowing me to accompany you on this journey. And I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.